So, on April 23rd, the FCC's repeal of net neutrality will officially go into effect. So, now is the time to take action if you care about net neutrality. Now, thus far, there's been a number of governors who took action to unilaterally secure net neutrality via executive order. And there's also 2 states that passed a bill into law to make sure that net neutrality is mandated, and this includes Washington, and I've got great news. Oregon just became the 2nd state to codify a bill into law. As Gizmodo's Melanie Ehrenkatz reports, in February, 3 middle school students helped push a statewide net neutrality bill. Today, Governor Kate Brown is headed to the girls' middle school in Portland, where she will sign the bill into law. It's an honor for the governor to come to our school and sign a bill that's so important to the 3 of us, Luca, a 12-year-old at Mount Tabor Middle School, told Gizmodo in an email. Luca, along with friends Lola, 13, and Athena, 13, testified before the Oregon House Committee on Rules in support of the bill, helping bring greater attention to it before the state's lawmakers voted it through to Governor Brown's desk. The legislation, House Bill 4155, aims to help guarantee that Oregon residents get the net neutrality protections that the Federal Communications Commission killed in December of last year. Specifically, the Republican-led FCC voted to overturn the agency's 2015 Open Internet Order, which forbade internet service providers from throttling or blocking legal online content or paid prioritization, better known as fast lanes, for companies that pay to have their services delivered to customers at greater speeds. Oregon's new law makes it illegal for the state's public bodies to work with internet service providers that take part in discriminatory activities such as paid prioritization and blocking content online. However, as Ars Technica puts it, it is likely ISPs will sue to strike down Oregon's new law, as companies like AT&T and Verizon had said they would do in response to other state efforts. When the federal government repealed net neutrality, they took a step backward, Governor Brown said in a speech on Monday at Mount Tabor. In Oregon, we want to move forward to make sure that the internet is a level playing field instead of exacerbating economic disparity. Now, it is true that AT&T and Verizon will be challenging this. In fact, the lobbying firm that represents them has already stated publicly that they will aggressively challenge any state that chooses to pass their own net neutrality rules. But with that being said, this is still a victory, because even if it's struck down, the fact that we have it on the books at least for a year or two, that is only further strengthening our argument, and it's better for the residents of Oregon if we have net neutrality longer. So this might be temporary, who knows if it's struck down or not, but even if it is, it's still important, it's still a win. Now again, Washington was the only other state that passed a bill protecting net neutrality, and when it comes to the 5 states whose governors stepped up, that includes Montana, New Jersey, New York, Hawaii, and Vermont. Now, currently, there's just a couple of weeks left, and if you live in a state that hasn't taken action yet, it may be the case that your state does act, because there are bills circulating in multiple legislatures. That includes Alaska, California, Colorado, Delaware, Georgia, Idaho, Kansas, Kentucky, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Missouri, Nebraska, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. Now, these states in particular are important because they're considering bills to protect net neutrality, and they haven't had a governor step up to protect net neutrality unilaterally with an executive order. So if you live in one of these states, please do yourself a favor and call your state representative or state senator and make sure that he or she supports this bill. Because as of the 23rd of April, net neutrality will be gone federally, and you will be vulnerable. Your ISP has the authority to block websites, to throttle content, and it's not going to be good. Now, Connecticut was previously on that list until just recently, when 2 Republicans, one in particular, decided to unilaterally kill it in committee. Paul Formica, in particular, invoked this really weird, obscure legislative rule to make sure it doesn't even get voted on. So the fight to stop progress that we're making, it's fierce. These internet service providers have billions in profit potentially to be made with the repeal of net neutrality, and they're doing everything in their power to stop the momentum. But we can't stop the momentum. Now, unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people tune out of the net neutrality debate. And we can't do that. We have to stay vigilant, and we have to exert pressure on lawmakers, because if we don't, then they will back down, because there's a lot of political issues that need our attention currently, or need their attention more specifically. So if we basically don't put pressure on them and keep pressure on them consistently, then they're going to tune out and focus on something else, but we can't let them. We have to make sure that we take action to protect net neutrality, and in many states, that just requires a phone call. It takes 5 minutes of your time. If you really have a lot of time, or you live close to your state capital, show up. I mean, this is something that's really important. Again, April 23rd, net neutrality will be gone. And again, even for the states like Oregon and Washington and Montana and New Jersey, 7 states really at this point, who have net neutrality, who saved it either through an executive order or legislation, that may not be permanent. It may not be a permanent solution. But at least for now, it extends net neutrality in those specific states and protects it longer. So residents in those states will still have net neutrality protections that Ajit Pai and the FCC repealed until it's challenged. So I've said this once, I'll say it again. It's crunch time for net neutrality. If you care about this issue, you've got to take action, and you've got to influence your friends and family to take action, because to have an internet without net neutrality, I don't want to envision what that would be like. I mean, we've already done that, right? We've catastrophized what the internet will look like without net neutrality, and certainly it's not all going to change at once. It's going to be subtle. They're going to slowly implement these changes, but really, when you look back at this point, I want you to feel as though you did everything you could to make sure you made a difference. Because 10 years from now, if net neutrality isn't saved, the internet will look completely different. And nothing would make me happier than to be proven wrong, but I know that there's too much on the line for these internet service providers. There's too much money to be made to not use this repeal of net neutrality to screw us over. So take action and fight if you really want to save net neutrality in your state.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.